Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to the Annie's Project Mitigating Risk Across Common Barriers to Profitability webinar series. Today we have with us Dr. Kenesha Reynolds she's an agricultural business management specialist from the University of New Hampshire Extension, and she's going to be talking to us today about pricing for profit. We're thrilled to have her with us today, and just a little bit more about our project. This webinar series is focusing on financial literacy, and it is being held in conjunction with our Know Your Numbers, Know Your Options for the Northeast program. And this is a cooperative effort between Annie's Project, Rutgers Cooperative Extension, University of Maryland Extension, and the University of New Hampshire Extension. This program is being provided free to participants because of a grant that we received from the United States Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Program. I'm happy to be here. My name is Doris Mold, and I'm co-CEO of Annie's Project. And along with us today, handling things behind the scene, is Carisha Devlin, the other co-CEO of Annie's Project. So hi, Carisha. We're happy to have you with us today. All right, before we get started into the meat of the topic, we are going to launch a poll. And actually, we have the same poll twice, so please don't answer both of them. It didn't come out quite the way we had planned, but if you could respond to the poll. When it comes to pricing, I am not sure what I'm doing, a beginner, feel somewhat knowledgeable, maybe you're a real pro, or you're uncertain. All right. All right, we'll give it a moment or two more, and we are going to, just thought we'd give everyone an idea. So we've got results here for the people that are on so far, and this is always a good intro to get everybody settled in the room. And those of you that are just coming in, welcome. We're just sharing the results from our poll. We have somebody that's not sure about what they're doing, so great, you're in the right spot, as are the beginners out there and the people that feel somewhat knowledgeable. So Kenesha, we've got kind of the full array, and people are in the right spot to learn more about pricing for profit. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Kenesha, and we'll have a great session and look forward to your questions. If you do have questions, please put those in the chat box. You are muted. And Kenesha will be happy to answer those as time goes on. Thank you.
Thanks, Doris. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me here today. So as Doris says, I'm Kenesha Reynolds. I am with UNH Cooperative Extension. I serve as the state specialist for farm business management, and my team obviously work on all things business with farmers. From marketing to finance, legal, and labor. And I'm really honored to be doing this presentation today. All right, so let's jump into it then. So I don't need to say this, but determining the price of your product is really, really important. But what we found is this is a real challenge for a lot of producers, and often, you know, the producers that we work with, what we found is that they're often, you know, basing their prices for their products on a single factor. And that could be that they're looking at their competitors' prices. It could be that, you know, they're looking at the prices that are being charged at the farmer's market, or it could be, you know, the prices at their grocery store. So there's no consideration really given to their time and their effort to produce these products, or no consideration given to the cost of producing these products. They oftentimes don't think about, you know, the differences between the attributes of their product and their competitors' products. So for example, you know, maybe that their products are of a higher quality than their competitors' products. And so none of that is given any thought And I often joke that a lot of times I think the methods that farmers use to price their product is similar to pulling a number from a hat, just a random number, which might seem, you know, a little bit loosey-goosey, but oftentimes it is really selected at random. However, you know, what I want you to keep in mind is that, you know, pricing decisions, they're complex. It takes time and effort on your part, or, you know, whoever is making those decisions, maybe your managers. There are multiple factors to take into consideration when you're pricing your products. So it is an important role that you as the owner or your manager or whoever is making those decisions, it is an important role that they play. It is an important role in your marketing and your business plan, which I'm sure, I can't see you all, but I'm sure that everyone on here, you have a marketing or slash business plan. And overall, you know, just remembering that your pricing strategy is an overall important part of your planning and process. So that is really just to say it is not an afterthought. It impacts the potential of your business to meet its goals. And, you know, think about what those goals are. It could be personal, it could be, you know, my goal from my farm operation is to be able to cover all my family expenses. It could be that I really want to not have to do a second job and just have farming be my primary job. So take a moment to think about what those goals are, both personal and business goals, and then think about, you know, how your prices will impact those goals that you have. And also, most importantly in my mind is, you know, your prices affect your bottom line. And I know farming is indeed a passion for a lot of growers, including my dad. But the reality is, you know, the goal of any business, right, is to make a profit, and it should be no different for your farm. So as I said before, there are many factors to consider when pricing your products. The first here on this slide, and one of the most important things to think about, is your production costs. So you want to make sure that you're covering all the costs that are associated, or all your expenses with growing your products or raising your animals. And if you don't know what these expenses are, then obviously you won't know how to price your products to ensure that you're charging that price that is going to allow you to operate profitably. And we'll get more in depth in the production cost or cost of production shortly. Another factor to consider here is your customers, right? So who are your customers? What are their demographics? What are their socioeconomic status? What are their preferences? You have to know and understand your customers well, and then take what you know about your customers into consideration, you know, when determining the price, your pricing strategies. Your product and your product uniqueness or differentiation is also a factor that plays in when you're thinking about, you know, pricing your product. So what is it that's unique or different about your product that you're offering in the market? I love to use infused honey as my example because I'm a real fan of infused honey. And so I often say, you know, if your honey is, say, pumpkin infused honey, because it's my favorite, and your competitors, it's just regular honey, you know, you have to take that into consideration. Or maybe your product is of a higher quality, maybe it tastes better, and so forth. So you want to be able to think about those things, you know, when you're thinking about pricing your products. Again, I believe I said this before, but pricing is indeed a dynamic process, right? It's not once and done. There are other things that are happening in the environment that are changing. And so you have to adjust your prices to match with those changing factors. So for example, maybe your cost, right? Your variable cost, your fixed cost could be increasing. So obviously you want to change or adjust your price to match those increase in your expenses or in your cost to produce. Obviously, if you don't and you're selling below what it's costing you to produce, then you're operating your business at a loss. Also think about, new competitors or new products and how those would impact the demand for your products, and hence the price of your products. And then finally, think about your consumers and the change in their, taste and preferences, and maybe the change in their income. I think in the end, what I want you to remember here is that pricing your products is, it's reiterative, right? Because there are other things that are taking place and other changes, other factors are changing. So you want to make sure that you're rethinking your price when other factors are changing as well. All right, so just going back to the importance of the business plan. Again, here, your pricing strategy is a key part of your marketing or your business plan. It is a part of the process of thinking and planning. So you don't want it to be, an afterthought. And that's what we find with a lot of producers, is that they would grow the products and then think about selling the products. But I want you to consider, the costs that are associated, not just with producing, but also with marketing. So take some time, to put together your business plan or your marketing plan, and make sure that you're incorporating your pricing strategy and fully thinking through what that strategy could look like. So again, just really stressing the need to plan ahead. So again, when it comes to your business plan, thinking that your pricing strategy has to be consistent with other components of the marketing plan, right? And this is why I say you do it while you're putting together your plan, to make sure that it matches all the other components that you're thinking about. So for example, you want to make sure that if you position your product in the market as, say, higher quality or premium product, then you want to make sure that your pricing is reflecting that, right? If you, for example, if we go back to that honey example, if you consider your honey to be superior in quality to your competition or to your competitors, then pricing your honey lower than your competitors' prices could be, confusing and contradicting. Similarly, maybe you want to be considered as the low-cost leader, and in this case, think about a company like Walmart. Then obviously, the quality of your product will reflect that. And finally, you want to think about when you're putting together your plan, that your pricing is consistent with the marketing channel that you are utilizing. So if you're selling into the direct-to-consumer channels, or maybe those retail intermediate channels, here you might get more for your products. So your consumers in the direct-to-consumer markets are willing to pay more because they're assuming, that they're getting more than just that product. So they're willing to pay for that experience. They're getting fresh, local, healthy products. They're paying for the convenience. Maybe it is for some environmental reasons, maybe for the friendship or relationship that they have with you, the farmer. But then on the flip side, when you're selling into wholesale channels, then, the prices will be different. So this will probably be a lower price that you'll get for your products. So you want to make sure that you know what your prices are, what you can sell your products for before you even have conversations, with potential wholesale buyers of your products. If you don't, it could result in a loss of sales if you're not able to really have that conversation with the buyer of what your prices could be. But in my mind, more importantly, you could agree to a price that is not consistent with your operation making a profit. So just take some time, prepare, know what it would cost you to produce, and then, deciding what that price would be that would make you profitable. All right, so let's talk about those pricing strategies. So there are three factors that I want you to consider when thinking about the price you want to charge for your product. So the three factors here, the three big C's, is cost-based pricing, customer-based pricing, and competitive-based pricing. So cost-based pricing, why is it important to know your cost? And really just simply put, if you don't know how much it costs you to produce these products, then you won't know what price to charge for your products to be able to make a profit. So you want to cover all your expenses and make a profit for your products. So I'm not going to go over the enterprise budget here because I don't know if this is already covered or will be covered in this series, but understanding that the base of a cost-based pricing is developing your enterprise budgets. And I'm happy to share a link to a video one of my colleagues has done on enterprise budget. If you haven't, if you don't know how to create your budgets, or if it will not be covered in this series. So as a refresher, your enterprise budgets will have your variable costs and your fixed costs, and together those will be your total cost. So if you are growing, let's say, fresh market tomatoes, then your variable costs are those costs that are directly associated with growing those tomatoes. So that might be, the cost for the transplants, maybe the cost for packaging, maybe the cost for land preparation, and so forth. And your fixed costs then would be those costs that are not directly associated, that you will incur those costs, whether you grow those tomatoes or not. And that could be maybe the cost of your equipment, your tractor, maybe land costs, land rent, and so forth. So then together, again, as I said, those two costs, your variable cost and your fixed cost, would then give you your total cost. And those are based on the formula that I'm showing here in order for you to get your break-even price. So that's really just saying the price that you have to sell at just to cover the cost of producing those products will be your variable cost per unit and your fixed cost per unit. And I'm going to stop share and reshare a budget that we've developed. It's a honey budget, but I think it will be a nice way just to show once you've developed your enterprise budget, how simple it is then to calculate your cost. All right, so here I'm showing again the sample honey budget, and I hope you can see it. Carisha, if you don't mind, just giving me a thumbs up if you can see this Excel sheet, or Doris. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that it's what's being shown.
You're coming through loud and clear on that.
Perfect. All right, so this honey budget that you're looking at, if you remember the formula that I showed briefly, we're looking at, your variable cost per unit, and you're looking here at the variable cost, and then you're looking at your fixed cost per unit. And the other piece of the equation is your quantity. And to be clear, this quantity is what you're selling, not necessarily what you produce, because those can be two different things. So really quickly, here we're looking at selling 600 pounds of honey, and the variable costs are listed here. So if I want to find my variable cost per unit, I could easily, make a calculation. I take my total for B's replacement in this case. I divide that out by my 600 pounds, and that would give me that 45 cents. And we'll do that for all these different variable costs that you see here. We could also, just take the total here off the variable cost, this 5,790. I could take that, I could divide that out by the quantity, which is that 600 here, and that would equal to this 965 that you're seeing here. So I could do it either way. I could just do my total variable cost and then divide it out by the quantity, or I could do individual. But what we're getting to is that total variable cost per unit, which in this case, it will be $9.65 to produce the honey that we need. We'll do the same thing with the fixed cost, right? We'll take the total fixed cost or individual fixed costs, we'll divide it out by that 600, the quantity that we see up top, and that should give us these variable costs per unit on the side. And if we add those, we'll get $2.06. So what does that mean? If I take this variable cost per unit of $9.65, and I add that to the fixed costs per unit of $2.06, that will give me that $11.71. So here, this $11.71 is what I would have to sell my honey just to break even. I wouldn't make a profit if I sell it at $11.71. This is just to cover the cost of producing the honey. So needless to say, if I wanted to make a profit here, I would have to sell that honey for some price above that $11.71. All right, so that was just a quick way just to show, but again, this is the enterprise budget, and you'll have to do that first, have those numbers handy to be able to calculate the price. And I will share a link with Doris that Doris can share with you if needed. All right, I'm gonna switch back to the PowerPoint. And hopefully it's coming through, and you should be seeing cost-based pricing. All right, so here we talked about the calculation, how to get your break-even price. We talked about, upping that number to be able to make a profit. And then I often get asked, where do we get that cost data from? And I say, if you're already farming and you have those numbers, obviously those are the most accurate numbers, so you want to use those. If you're farming already and you're not, keeping those records, it is a great time for you to start doing that, because those are going to be the best, most accurate numbers for you to use. And if you don't have those personal farm numbers, then if I'm thinking about some of those supplies that you need or input costs that you need, you can reach out to suppliers to see and get an estimate of what those costs could look like. All right, so the second factor here to consider is your customer base pricing. So first off, you should be aware that price is almost always a factor in purchasing decision made by your customers. And I say almost always because they are consumers who have a high disposable income, that pricing is not the thing that they consider when purchasing, or it's not the main factor that they take into consideration. But for the typical consumer, price, their income is limited, and so they will be thinking about pricing when they're buying products. So it's important then for you to understand who your customers are, whether or not they have the disposable income to allow them to not think about pricing, or whether or not pricing is indeed a main factor when they're making decisions. So who are your customers? How old are they? Can you find them maybe strolling around the farmer's market, maybe on farm for pick your own experience? Maybe they prefer being at home and having the products delivered to them. Are they the typical consumers who will just buy a product if they need it and they don't care what the cost is? They just like the convenience, so they will purchase. And I often use my husband in this example, because if he needs something, he's just going to purchase. Or maybe they are the opposite, right? Where they are the shoppers who will spend the time to look around for a bargain, and I am that person. So thinking about those factors. What is their income level? Can they afford to pay premium for your products or not? Are they single income household or double income? Where's their location? Are they in high-end neighborhoods, or maybe they're in lower end or poorer neighborhoods? All of these factors and others, demographic factors, will impact or influence the consumers when they're making pricing decisions. In addition to those demographic information or data, you want to think about the consumer's psychographic, right? So why do they purchase the way they do, and how do they make these purchasing decisions. So some questions I have here on the screen, what are the benefits that they're seeking from your products? And these are either your consumers or your potential consumers. Are they looking for convenience? Maybe it is the quality of the product. Maybe it's your production method, right? Maybe they want organically grown or naturally grown or some other production methods. But understanding these preferences for different, attributes will help you to be able to determine or to decide the prices or your pricing strategy. Another question here would be whether price is an important factor in their purchasing decision. Again, there are customers who have a high disposable income and might not consider price when they want to purchase something. But then there are others, right, on the opposite spectrum. There are others who have limited disposable income, and so price is an important factor when they're deciding to purchase a product or not. Another question to ask, what are they willing to pay? Are they willing to pay a premium for your products? There are some consumers who will pay a premium for your products. And we talked about those direct-to-consumer markets where consumers are willing to pay higher in those markets. Or maybe, those customers or potential customers, they don't see your products as having enough value to justify them paying, a premium for your products. Also thinking, are they purchasing high volume and often, or are they the occasional shopper buying the bare minimum? Are they brand loyal customers, and will they stick with your brand or your product no matter what, or are they willing to buy, regardless of the brand? I am not a brand loyal customer by any means, but then there are others who are brand loyal, and I often think about Apple products like iPhones and iPads and all those different I's. There are consumers who are indeed loyal to Apple, and it doesn't matter the price of their products. They want Apple products, and so they will buy that brand no matter what, including the price. They will pay that high price. Are they repeat customers? So all these are things to think about. There are other questions to ask when you're thinking about who your customers or potential customers are, and use what you know about your customers or potential customers to make an informed decision on your pricing. So again, price is almost always a factor considered when making purchasing decision by some consumers, probably more consumers than you think, because they have limited income. They're also, shopping on a budget. They have options, right? So they have substitute products. So instead of buying your products at the higher price, they will buy a substitute product at some lower price. Again, customers may purchase more or less depending on your price. So keep that in mind. At the end, when it comes to consumer-based pricing, price is not always the most important or deciding factors for everyone, but in most cases, it is considered by a lot of consumers. Thinking too that your customers' perception of your products could be influenced by your price. So again, if you are that positioning your product as high-end products, then selling it for cheap might not, reflect the quality and cause confusion in the minds of your consumers or potential consumers. It's just, I would just stress just to understand who your target customers are. So even if you're currently selling, and there are things about those customers who you're currently selling to that you don't know, do a little bit of homework. And then those customers that you are potential customers that you would like to target, again, do your homework to understand who those customers are and, some of the attributes that are associated with those customers. All right, finally, we have the competitor-based pricing. So identifying and evaluating your competitors is also important in your pricing strategies. Their characteristics, their percentage market share, and their prices, all of that will impact the market environment and will provide you then with a good sense of what prices may be acceptable in that market that you want to sell into. So knowing your competitors' characteristics could help you also to identify, what will set you apart, what is your competitive advantage, or help you to identify, your little niche area in the market. And then this could help you to decide, whether you'll set your prices similar to your competition or, some price higher or some price lower. So some factors to consider when you're doing your homework on your competition. Who are they? So where are they? How long have they been in business? Are they established? Do they have a good customer base? Are they close in proximity to your farm? Are they well established and well known, and which would make it hard for you to tap into that market that you want to sell into? Are they selling similar products to your products or your potential products? Are their products differentiated? Is there something different about their products than what you have or what you're considering to grow or raise or produce? Do they produce and supply in high volume, or are they just providing a relatively small amount to the market? What marketing channels are they selling into? Are they the direct to consumers, like the farmers markets, on farm and so forth, or are they wholesale producers or suppliers? Are they actively promoting and advertising their products? And if so, where are they doing this? On their social media, maybe by email, websites, and so on. And what are then the prices? This is also really important. What are the prices that they're charging for their products? Another great way to understand your competitors is to do a SWOT analysis. So, doing your homework of what their strengths are or what their weaknesses are, and how when you identify those weaknesses, is that an in for you? Is that something where you're stronger in and therefore you can fill that need or fill that gap? So what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And how could you, capitalize on that or use that information to determine your competitive advantage? Also, what are some of those opportunities that exist and how are they capitalizing on those opportunities? And what are some of those threats and how are they handling those threats? I want to say here, I added this bullet point because I think it's really important that if you are thinking about starting a farm, so if you're not currently, farming at a high level, and you're looking to probably expand, just think about some of those barriers that you might encounter when you're trying to start a farm. And that could be maybe you don't have access to affordable land, maybe it's startup capital, maybe you don't have enough experience across the board with farming, or maybe access to market or labor. And whether or not your competitors who are already in the market, if they have access to all these different resources that you don't, and how that will impact you. Also think about your competitors. If you're trying to tap into this market, that if you, are coming into this market, how will your competitors react to that? So do they have the ability to lower prices? Because one of the things that might attract you is the prices that's in this market, right? But if you decide to sell into this market, how will your competitors react? Can they lower those prices and then it will not be beneficial for you? Can they increase their advertisements or promotion? And then once you know those things, how then could you craft a strategy to combat those if you were to go ahead and decide to produce those products or sell in that particular market? All right, so again, thinking now that I've done my homework, there are other things that you're probably gonna, try to find on your competition. But now that you've done your homework, what pricing strategies will you implement? Will you ask for a similar price? Maybe you'll price your products higher because you realize that your products, they're unique, they're differentiated for whatever attributes. They're higher quality, better tasting, but you've done your homework and now you know your products are just superior, and so I'm going to charge a higher cost for the products. And then, or maybe you decided, I'm going to price my products a little bit lower to increase the number of customers or potential customers. But I would caution you, if you're going to take that road and sell at a cheaper price, at the base of it, you have to be able to cover your costs. So don't sell your products cheaper if you're not going to make a profit. In the end, your product pricing is extremely important. It is a key part of your business or marketing plan. It's not an afterthought. It's not something you decide to think about after you've grown those products or produced those products. It is a part of your planning. Price is a deciding factor in making purchasing decisions for a lot of customers. And I say for most customers because for the most part, not all customers have that disposable income. So pricing is a deciding factor for most customers. And then finally, price affects your bottom line. Again, I know farming is a passion for a lot of people, but this is also a business, and you want to treat it as if it is a business where the goal is to, be profitable. And with that, that's all I have, Doris. And I'm going to go ahead and stop share.
So, Kanisha, when it comes to, let's say, people and bringing products to the farmer's market, and they've priced their product according to, they've given very close thought and attention to their prices, and it gets towards the end of the market day. Do you advocate or, that producers potentially mark down their prices to try to move whatever's left of their product since it's perishable, or bring it home, donate it elsewhere, maybe bring it home and turn it into something else? What do you do with that excess produce that, if you don't sell out that day?
I think I'm going to say, I would say it's a personal preference here. Maybe you need that money. And so instead of, taking it home and let it go bad, then you sell it for a cheaper price because you're still making something on those products. Maybe, your preference is to donate to maybe a food bank because that's important to you. But whatever you do, don't take it home and just leave it to spoil. That's losing money. If you have the ability to do some sort of value added, then that's also a great idea. That could bring you additional revenue if you do so. But thinking that when you start to do value added products, there are additional costs that comes with that, right? So maybe you were selling fresh lettuce at the market and it wasn't packaged in a certain way, and now you decide to do something with it. Now you need packaging. So there are additional costs that could come with that. So you just have to think about what's important to you and what strategy makes sense for you as an individual or for your farm.
Okay, great. We do have a couple questions here in the chat, so please encourage other people to do this as well. Does wholesale also include bakers and chefs? How much of a discount would they expect?
I often put those in those intermediate retail type markets, like restaurants. I usually dump them in those intermediate type markets. They're willing to pay, depending, a little bit higher, right? Because the chances are their customers are looking for these local, healthier products. And so they want to please their customers. So they're probably not going to lowball you like a big wholesale, like a grocery store or supermarket would. So let me look at the last part again. How much of a discount would they expect? I don't know. I can't give you a number. It's on an individual basis. It's the relationship you have with them. It's them understanding their cost and their prices and their consumers. So I can't give you a number for what that discount would look like, but chances are they will ask for a discount.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't be a good business person if you didn't ask for it. I mean, if you
Yeah,
don't ask, you don't get, right?
exactly. And you have to, I said the restaurant, they're going to have to make a profit also, right? So
Right.
they want to purchase those products as a lower cost so they can then, put a markup on there that will give them the highest profits. Because at the end of it, that's what it boils down to.
Well, and the thing is, when it comes to pricing too, depending on which market you're in, we're going to see different things. We have people that have signed up for this webinar from across the country. So if you're near a big city and, if you're East Coast or West Coast, the prices tend to be higher, what you can
Exactly.
charge a restaurant or at the farmer's market.
Exactly.
When you get to the Midwest, that's where the bargain basement shoppers are, or or other parts of the country that are maybe a little bit more rural,
Yeah.
farmers markets, things like that. There's a whole different kind of pricing platform. So
Mhm.
if you're walking around the New York City farmers market in Manhattan,
Yeah.
you'd see one level of prices. Don't think that you're going to be able to go back to,
Right.
small town Wisconsin and be able to charge that same level of price for quail's
Exactly.
eggs or whatever you're selling. So.
Exactly. And even within those states, Doris, there's a difference where you might be in those metropolitan areas and you'll get a higher price, but maybe if you go further out in New York, you're probably not going to get those costs. So even within those states, the pricing that you can charge is going to be different. Your consumers might be different. There are other factors that are going to impact that.
So it's really important, but you may live in an area which attracts a number of people that have second homes that are from the cities. So you need to really understand who your consumers are in the area because you might be missing some opportunities there on your pricing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, it is so key for you to understand who those customers or potential customers are. To your point that you might have some visitors just passing through for a couple months and they have the money and they want those fresh products. And so charging a higher price, they're probably not going to walk away from it.
Well, I know that's the case where I live. We live in an area where we farm, but there's all these we call them lake people that have
Yeah.
second homes, and they'll pay a lot more for prices than the local folks. So it's like
Mhm.
balancing that out.
Yeah, we
Um,
do have farmers in New Hampshire who are on the seacoast area that they will do that. They have visitors, tourists is what they call them, coming in at a certain time of the year, and they capitalize on that. They take advantage of that.
yeah. So we do have a question. What are the biggest mistakes that you see beginning farmers make with their pricing strategies?
I think not thinking about what it costs them to produce. A lot of times, beginner farmers might not be collecting their numbers or recording their numbers. So they have no idea what it costs them to produce the products. And so they just, pick a price. And oftentimes it's, like I said earlier in the presentation, it is a price based on somebody else's price, which oftentimes, who knows, they might not be making a profit for it. But I think the biggest mistake that I've seen with beginner farmers, they don't have their numbers. They're not good with record keeping, and so it's a guessing game.
Okay. Now, is there a particular profit margin, a percentage that we should be aiming for, or does it depend on the product? Another question from our chat.
I think it depends on the product. There might be a general margin, and I don't know what that number is, but I think it depends on the product and again the area too. Um, yeah, I don't know that number. I'm pretty sure there is some general random number or percentage out there, but I don't know that specifically. Maybe somebody else can put in the chat if they have an idea of what that is. But the product is going to be important for you to think about what those products are and how much higher could you sell it to potential customers or to customers, and they'll just, buy it without a problem. There's some products that if you try to up the price, your margin, not the price, if you try to get too high of a margin, consumers might rethink because now they're thinking the product is not worth that. So maybe somebody has a number they can throw in the chat. I'm sorry, I don't know that for sure.
Nisha, do you have any resources that you could point people towards if they're wanting more information on this topic?
I do have some, but I'm gonna look in my folder what I have, and I'll share with Doris what I have so Doris can share with the group.
Sure.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I think when it comes to margin, part of it is that you need to determine, what you're comfortable with. I think that's a big part of it. And also thinking, as you said, what the market will bear. People have different, people have different levels. So one of our participants said, I have learned a lot from the book Profit First.
Oh, I've never heard of that. I'm going to write that down.
So, and maybe our person can maybe give us a tidbit or two about what they learned from the book. And then, of course, someone else asked, who is the author?
Yeah.
So if you could share that, that would be very helpful. But when it comes to profit, everybody's a little bit different as to what they're comfortable with and what. And then also, what the capacity is, and that margin of profit is going to vary over time as well. In more mature industries, there's probably going to be less opportunity to capture a big profit margin as something is new and cutting edge and coming onto the market. And then also at the beginning of the season, first tomatoes always can go for a really high price. And then as the season goes on and everybody has mounds of tomatoes, your margin maybe goes down because your pricing has to, come more in line with what's going on at the market. So the old supply and demand thing definitely can come into play here.
Absolutely. And I would say too, it depends on your goals, right? Because I'm not gonna ever advocate for you selling below, making a profit. So we're assuming that at this point you're selling to make a profit. You just want to see how high you can go to make the most bang for your buck. But it depends on your goals. Maybe you're not the person who needs, that high of an income from this. You want to obviously make a profit. But I've worked with growers who, they had the savings and they had the income, and this is a passion for them. They're still making the profit, but they don't see the need to go super high on their markup. So again, it depends on your goals. Maybe you're looking forward to a great retirement, or maybe you have some plans to send your kids to college and you need that money, or you don't want that second job. So yeah, both your personal and business goals comes into play too when you're thinking about how high, what's that ceiling that I want to go to, assuming that I'm already making a profit. I just want to see how much I can push that envelope.
Okay. And one of our folks put into the chat where you can find that book as well, a link. So doing the work for Mr.
I will get that book.
Speaking of profit, we'll help Mr. Bezos out a little bit more if you order from Amazon there. He certainly needs your help. So
right.
Any other questions or comments, folks? I guess while we're doing that, while we're waiting for some additional questions, I'm going to put another poll up here, and then check your local library. That's always a good option. Let's see here. We're going to go to our next poll and launch that. But if you have questions while we're doing the poll, please feel free to and you can select as many as you would like. We'd appreciate your response. That helps Helps us kind of understand how things went or didn't go for you.
I like it. I'm ready to take on the world.
There we go. Okay. We've got here. So we're going to share results here. And so it sounds like we've done pretty well here. Kanisha, looks like you've worked your magic and people have a better understanding. But again, we will provide some more resources.
Hey, it's the starting point. Now you have the information. Now you have to do the homework. Yeah. So remember, understanding your customers and your competition. It takes some work, and I always tell people it doesn't have to be a daunting task in the sense that it doesn't have to be this huge research that I have to go out and do. It could be as simple as having conversations. But now that you have the information, you have to do the homework, the planning.
Yes, we will send other resources via email. So whatever I get from Kanisha will supply to those who participated in today's webinar. And we have been recording the webinar. So if you'd like to go back and watch it again, we certainly would welcome that, or you sharing this information with other folks. Any additional questions from anyone? Kanisha, do you have any other pearls of wisdom that you'd like to share with this group?
Pearls of wisdom. Do your homework. That's what I tell people all the time. Do your homework, okay? Far too often we see farmers who make decision after the fact. So they grow, they invest the money, and then they think about the marketing piece of it and the pricing piece of it. So my little word of wisdom, do your homework before you even get to planting. That's very, very important.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Well, just a little commercial for next week. We will be doing benchmarking and financial analysis, and you'll be hearing from yours truly on that topic. So you'll see Karisha and I back here next week. We hope to see you back, and thank you again, Kanisha, for your efforts in helping us all understand pricing better.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for joining us. We will say goodbye for now and look forward to seeing you next week.